This is the Peter Crouch podcast, and it's not live.
Hello and welcome to that Peter Crouch podcast. We've got the notorious SID and Chris Stark with us, and we call ourselves Football Heritage, right? As a podcast,
Yeah.
I feel like we have got a genuine legend of football on the podcast today, Mr. Martin Tyler.
That means I'm very old. So I accept that because I am. Thank you. It's
been a long time coming, right? Because we live in the very close by.
We've actually come in on the same train together, but I want to point out right at the start that there are two sides to the tracks. Peter lives in one side of it, which is very, very, very posh, and I'm down market, but we are close to each other. In fact, we could have done this podcast in 5 minutes.
Well, this is the problem. If you've spent an hour together, you've kind of said everything.
We have,
it's like a scenario I had once where I was going on a date, and I would have been about 15, 16 years old. And I was going on a date with this girl I'd never met. It was a double date, been sort of arranged by her friend. But I'd got her number before. And I'd text her a lot and kind of represented myself well on text. And then by the time I got to the date, I literally had nothing to say to her. And it was a real problem. But hopefully that's not happened today. With
No chance.
Peter did steer the conversation away from things that we might talk about now.
That's
but
it.
we have plenty to catch up.
But
We've
it's like
known each other a long time.
Yeah, we have, and we catch up like there's a local cafe by us.
Yeah.
And,
Munch and Wiggles.
We do have to give that a shout out. Munch and Wiggles. But we'll have a coffee in it, and like every time I see Martin, there's something incredible. You know, like if someone who's been in football for that long, I just think there's a little kind of nugget of something just so interesting. So every time we're on the train just then, I was like, whoa, I'll just save it. Because I was there, everything you say is interesting from how long you've been in the game.
Well, it's for both of you. We met in youth football, really. You playing for Tottenham's youth team at Highbury, scoring a goal.
How you remember that,
unreal, isn't
like, that was... Yeah, I was, 16, I think, or 17. And it was the first game that I was ever live on television. And it was the Premier League youth final.
Yeah, so City was in the actual Youth Cup final with Arsenal. And we met there. And you always looked like you'd get a goal from midfield.
I couldn't believe so we trained, this was the build up to the FA Youth Cup final, right? So we must have been 16, 17, same age. And we was playing Coventry. Wasn't it, at Highbury?
Chris Kirkland in goal.
That's it, yeah. And
see, that's what I mean. How many games you do? I don't know how you... This is a youth team game.
This is what we couldn't believe. So, first of all, we was absolutely buzzing to be in the FA Youth Cup final, right, as Arsenal. And then more importantly than that, it was incredible that obviously Martin Tyler, the voice of football then, was commentating obviously our game live on Sky. But you come down to the training ground to obviously do some research.
Well,
and just
to learn what you look like. And to be fair, you look the same now. So
I'll take that.
The moisturiser's done a good job, hasn't it?
But just go back there to go like, he was doing obviously all the top tier football then, but to come down and just sort of do some research and just recognise a few of the lads and just watch us train, and you spoke to Liam Brady and just to get a feel.
I saw the first leg of your game, Peter, so I didn't need to come to the training ground, but that wasn't televised, and Spurs lost 2-0 at home. So we thought the second leg would be a bit of a waste of time. It wasn't. Spurs had a real go.
Yeah.
Can I tell the story about the phone call I got the next day?
Yes.
Phone rang at my house the next day, and it was Ron Atkinson saying, "Who was that gangly guy up front? I like the look of him. What do you know about him?"
No way.
Yeah, and that was the very next day. Funny enough,
I didn't know that until the train ride this morning.
Had I not
Ron
told you
Atkinson.
that?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, so he rang. But he did it one other time as well. It's quite interesting because he rang me about Terry Gibson. Now, Peter's 6'10", Terry Gibson's 5'3", and so he obviously was not stereotyped in his forwards that he wanted to buy. And he did take Terry Gibson, didn't he? There was at Manchester United then. They went there, but I don't know. Probably you were very young then. Whether that was probably an issue for a manager who was a first-team manager, but you made an impression, that's for sure.
Do you remember the conversation then? Because I guess so. Ron Atkinson's called you and asked what were your thoughts?
I said he played very well. He scored a goal. I've got nothing to suggest that there's any character defect, because you do hear sometimes about, well, he won't make it because he might have been out the night before. I had nothing like that at all, and I'm sure that's still true today.
Of course.
And it was that kind of thing. But I didn't know that much. But I didn't discourage it. That's for sure.
So did that happen quite a lot?
Well, Ron
managers.
particularly was very friendly. We had a commentators team, which actually from mid-70s to the start of the Premier League, we played on Sundays. And we were all the commentators were working on Sundays, but we played charity games for 15 years up and down, even overseas, went to Florida and places like that, and we had a great time, and we'd get guests from the world of football. And Ron loved to play. He absolutely loved to play. He wasn't the greatest player. He was built like a tank. I think that was his nickname on the field, the tank. But he got good technique, and he just liked being around people, you know. And for Sunday, when there was no Sunday football, then he was involved on a Sunday, and he became a great contact. The better his career went on, the more we were sort of special friends, really, because we'd actually kicked a ball or two with him. And he was very, very useful when I was doing Manchester United games, for example. He was very helpful all the way till when he stopped management. And so we had each other's numbers. Are you playing in this game on Sunday? Can you play? I'd be ringing up. So he used my number for once rather than me ringing him.
Bad, isn't it?
Yeah, so obviously you've spanned of decades in football, and you've worked obviously on the big match, which was sensational. I used to love that, but before the Premier League started, and then obviously in the Premier League years, you got ITV, and then you right at the start of Sky. How has football changed, and have you enjoyed the evolution of it, or was there something special about it when you first started?
I fell in love with football going to my first ever game in 1953. I was taken to Woking. I was 8 years old, and the boy next door was 10, so he was allowed to take me. So we went on the bus straight to the ground, watched Woking beat Kingstonian 4-1, two clubs that I ended up coaching at both of those clubs, and I was hooked. I remember the green of the grass. It was December, so it couldn't have been much grass in those days, but Woking playing red and white half shirts, which were a big visual impact as well. And from then on, I just wanted to play, but there was no system at all. Primary school, I played a few games in this primary school team. I went to a school that then gave up football, one of the old grammar school state school, but they decided after I'd been there a couple of years, I don't think I was personally responsible for this, but they decided they weren't going to do football anymore and switched to rugby. So there was nothing really. I went to university and then got some coaching there and played for Corinthian Casuals in the old Isthmian League and was coached by some really good people. George Cohen, who won the World Cup, God rest his soul, a lovely man, to get that kind of input. And from Tottenham, actually, before no one around in this room will remember, but one of Bill Nicholson's assistant was a guy called Pat Welton, who gave me my debut actually as coach, and he ended up working for Spurs. He'd coached the England under 18 team. I think he was a proper coach, and so I had some time with him as well. So I learnt a lot. The coaches were wasting their time on me, really, but it wasn't my time. I didn't waste my own time because it helped me a lot when I did get the chance to go into broadcasting, which I was telling Peter earlier, I didn't want to take because I didn't want to give up playing. But he had to make a choice. I was 27, and I got the chance to do some work in television, which led to commentating.
I asked Martin on the way here, right? Would you give up your commentary career for a few games in league football? And he said, maybe.
Wow.
I was like,
Maybe.
you've reached the pinnacle of commentary, but that's how much you want to be a player. Right?
And that's reactive commentating. Proactive is playing.
Yeah.
And I played a long time. I played a couple of years ago, and I played in a charity match at Dartford, and I scored, and they filmed it, and I go, oh wow, and then I looked at it and I thought, oh my goodness. Who is this old bloke? I had to slide in. It was a cutback, and I slid in, and quite a good connection. So doing it, I felt very good. And then I watched it again, and I felt terrible. It took me about 3 days to get back on my feet again, let alone. But playing is the best.
Yeah.
And then commentating's the next best for me, and I have been coaching, which is not as good because you can control yourself as a commentator, but you can't control the team that you've been part of picking, although we've had some good times in non-league football and got Woking into the National League and played Watford in the FA Cup, which was a big thrill. That was two
Big Watford fan.
Two worlds colliding. You remember the game, we went to the final that year, and all the Woking people were supporting. Javi Gracia was wonderful to us on the day. I was telling Peter that Troy Deeney was a sub, and he'd had a bit of a to-do in the media with our centre-half, a guy called Ben Gehring. And so it was only 1-0. And then Troy came on and made it 2-0 within about 2 minutes. But, you know, it was moving in exalted company, really. But although he berated me in the first half when he was sitting on the bench, because I was going, I'll throw, you know, like everybody, especially non-league, does. Behave, Martin, he kept saying, behave. And maybe I did in the end, because he's still speaking to me.
So with regards to the commentary career, there must be so many games that you've watched over the years, but is there any that really stick out, like favourite games and favourite moments for you personally?
Well, the best game, I've been lucky enough to have one in my mind, because we think of thousands of games, but was the 4-3, the first 4-3 between Liverpool and Newcastle.
Collymore closing in.
Collymore closing in. Yeah, bless Stanley. When he was on TalkSport regularly, he used to use that as a part of the build-up, didn't they? So even I can remember that. I tend not to remember what was said. Even driving home, I tend not to remember what was said.
Can I just interject there? You know, I mean, who's the guy who's what was the programme? But I do not believe it. You know that one? He said,
Victor Meldrew.
Victor Meldrew.
Yes.
When people just say that, like, when they see him, they shout it to him,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Do you? People must do that to you when they see you.
Yeah.
Like recent history is probably Aguero, but Collymore closing in. Just the little buzzwords. Do you have that?
The Aguero, almost not every
Daily.
day, but certainly weekly. Yeah.
So what people always walk past you and go, Aguero!
little kids come up to me and say, "Can I have a selfie with you? You're Aguero." And I go, "Well, you weren't born. Like, how do you know anything about this?" And my dad told me, and I've seen it. Of course, it's there. And one of the reason why I came to watch you guys train and play to do my research is there was nothing else but to do that. Now I'm going to the FIFA Club World Cup, and I've got teams that I've not seen play, and I've got all the YouTube stuff available to at least give me a head start. So, but when I get there, and I've got 4 days before I do a game between a Tunisian team and a Brazilian team, hopefully they'll be training. And actually, we had a commentator's briefing online with the people that are employing us, and I said, "Well, have you fixed for us to go to the training?" And they said, "Well, why would you want to do that?" And I thought, "Well, that's the best way." You know? And so I'll let you know whether. But it's much harder now, because obviously there are a lot more broadcasters. So I understand the security elements. When I was just the one, then it was easy. And the very first game I did, I didn't really know the opposition. It was Southampton, who I'd seen play 2 days before it was Christmas. They played on Boxing Day. And then my very first commentary on the 28th, they're playing Sheffield Wednesday, who I hadn't seen. But this is how lucky, fate, destiny, if you want. So I went to the hotel. That's another way of doing it. So they came down the night before, obviously, before the game. And in the hotel, so I saw their manager, who was a guy called Steve Burtonshaw. He worked a long time for Arsenal. Wasn't a manager very often, but was a big person in football. And I said, "Can I just watch and meet their dinner?" But he said, "No, I can do better than that. We're training in the morning." And I went, "Well, this is the morning of the match." He said, "Can I come?" "Yeah, of course you can. We're just up the road. If you go into Southampton, there's down the avenues, I think it's called, there's some...
Oh, the cow...
near where the old ground used to be, used to turn right to the Dell.
Yeah.
They trained just on the park there.
Yeah,
And
the common.
yeah, the common.
Yeah.
That's it. And so he said, "Yeah, come down." So I'm standing next, as close as we are now, watching them on the morning of my very first commentary. And of course, dealing with them, there's only 12 of them are going to be involved, as opposed to the...
Well, they just trained in the centre of town like that. Like,
Well,
like
it was a
just in a
stretch.
park.
We've done that.
done that.
I've done that in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember Stoke?
Seriously?
We trained in Islington,
seriously? middle
middle of Islington. We were going through a few little set pieces and stuff.
Okay.
There was dogs walking across the pitch.
We had exactly the same thing with Reading. We trained in Moss Side, in Manchester. We got off the bus. It was like, whoa, wow, literally in the park, and it was just like little, just not even training really. It was just loosen the legs.
Yeah. Just a little
proper kit on
loosen,
though. You had a kit on, boots, everything.
Cloughie trained them in a roundabout, didn't he? And Forest were winning those European
Yeah, that's
trophies.
right.
The only
Yeah,
grass
yeah.
bit was in a roundabout, in the middle of a roundabout. So they got the ball down.
Imagine seeing that. You know, just very quickly, when you said that you asked to just watch them have dinner,
Yeah.
was that so to help with the commentary, right?
Well,
To
see what they
recognise
look like. Yeah, there are
But you
three
can do that
principles.
from watching them eat dinner.
Yeah, yeah. Well, don't forget, you have a photo of them probably, I'd get a few programs from the club. They would always send programs. If you rang up and said, "I'm doing your game in 3 weeks, could you send me the most recent programs?" They'd do things like that. But there were no heads of communication or anything. You just had to, as you built up your contacts, but most of the contacts with people you see at matches, so there'd be the coaches or the kit men, and they do what they could to help. But it was really important. I would still do that if Flamengo, I'm doing in my first game, if they said, well, you can't come to our training session, but you can hang around the hotel, I'll hang around the hotel.
And when you're watching them, do you have a sort of commentary mind on? Are you going like when Steve Sidwell's moving to the buffet, Peter Crouch?
Well,
is there
possibly.
he's gone for
I've
the
never
chicken?
thought of it quite like that, really. Maybe I'll try that. You're teaching an old dog a new trick here, really.
Who's having a sip of water? Drink it in.
But one thing you do,
Parmigiano.
you do look at them as if they remind you of somebody else. And neither of these two gentlemen reminded me of anybody else, so I had to look at the real thing. But that's a clue sometimes. And of course, when they're actually, this wasn't my idea. Danny Higginbottom, who now lives in Philadelphia, where I'm going to. I think he still does. He was the first person to tell me as a co-commentator, look at the boots.
Yeah.
Of course, when I started, all the boots were black boots, except for Alan Ball, who wore white boots. And Brian Moore used to say, you have to be a very good player to wear white boots these days. They all commentator from the time. Now, of course, but you do find that some clubs go in trends, so it's no good having 5 players with pink boots. But anything, strapping on a hand, anything at all that can help you, because identification with television is the key. On radio, you can probably get away with it a little bit more. Not saying that the radio commentators aren't as disciplined as I try to be, but you have got a bit of leeway. But on television, if you get it wrong, you got it wrong, and everybody around the world knows you got it wrong. So
I'm fascinated by the research that goes into it, because every commentator I've met, you do your own notes. You have like a little black book that you've got on players. Do you keep the notes you've got on players? Have you kept them over the years? And do you do all your own research?
Well, working for the big broadcast, I started at ITV for 17 years there, a wonderful time, and taught me my trade, really. And then Sky have been brilliant to me for over 30 years, and there was a lot of factual backup on that. But because I started when there was very little, and I got used to doing my own stuff, and therefore I still do my own stuff. And now I'm working more as a gun for hire again, a freelance. So I don't get that backup from the big companies. So I'm used to doing it myself. But no, there's a lot of good stuff. But the trouble is, when you're commentating, the show's been on for, you guys are on talking before the show starts. So if it's a good stat, you've used it, and rightly so. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but if it's somebody doing this, or that you that it's somebody's birthday or something like that you think you might spot that up quite early. So I like to do it myself, but it's unlimited. That's the problem. You really don't know when to stop. And I think that's the skill, really, is saying enough is enough. And sometimes when you're doing big games, all you're doing is adding on to the notes that you did it the last time. But when you're starting like in the FIFA Club World Cup with teams that I've never commentated on before, then there's a lot to be done. And I, to be honest with you, I could be doing that now, and it's a testament of how much I think of you and the quality of your work doing this, and how much I've known and loved you down the years and respected what you've done in the game, that I've stopped prepping for a couple of hours. So and it's good for me. So thank you for asking me today.
God, that's
we get obviously a lot of the stat packs that come out, as you say, for the broadcasters. I mean, it's a bit of overkill, but it's no stone unturned. You probably just use, because obviously you need to go on different scenarios of the games, because anyone, I can imagine, I say anyone, it's easier to commentate on a 4-all thrilling game. But when you've got a 0-0 boring game, and you need to, it's a bit stop-start, and you need to sort of go to your stat, like your go-to stats, isn't it, to sort of just keep
You're
something
absolutely
alive.
right. There's a lot of data now that's not commentary research, but we get given it. Expected goals and percentage of we were talking about the centre backs who pass the ball to each other to put their stats up, their passing stats. So you see at half time who's been the most accurate, 95% accuracy with their passing. The two centre backs just giving it to each other with nobody challenging them. But those kind of, I like those things as well. I do think it's a way to look at a game almost through your eyes, really, to be able to say, yeah, well, that's the way they play. There are good facts about recovering the ball in certain areas. The best pressers, which we would never have thought about before. We just used to call closing it down. We don't press because it's quite a new word, but there's a lot of new terminology for what is basically essentially the same thing.
Well, we've talked about this before. Have you, or do you, in your mind, take any responsibility for a certain term that is just commonplace in football now?
No. I sometimes find myself, I never like breaking the deadlock. I've refused to say that. So I've said it now in public.
Is that something that you've really refrained from saying? They broke the deadlock?
Genuinely. I just don't know why. I just didn't like it. And there are terms on. Actually, I'm very good friends with the Sky cricket producer, and I love watching Chris. My other game, really. And I messaged him. He likes me to just occasionally chip in, listen to the cricket commentators, who are all very, very good. But when it's a no ball, it's become I'll have to bowl that one again. And I go, well, he can't bowl that one again, can he? So
Good point.
It means he's got to bowl another ball again. Yeah, I accept that, but he can't bowl that one. Yeah. So I did message him last week to say, just it's a personal little ripple through me. Do they have? And he came back and said, no, of course they can't bowl the same. So I don't know whether they have any influence or not. But yeah, we do think about words, and you don't want to be sounding the same all the time. But I don't like listening to what I've done. So there's probably a million things that I've done over the 50 years that you know about that I won't recognise because I'm moving on to the next game all the time, you know?
Without obviously wanting to be fresh and keep it, current, there's something that we brought in on the podcast that we're trying to get into the mainstream, which is the false two. We talk about the false nine, right?
Yeah.
Why are we?
I don't like the false nine, by the way.
Exactly right.
No.
So we're saying, why is it always about the nine? We can have a false two. I don't know if you've seen Caicedo play recently.
Yeah.
Plays at right back, but comes into midfield. So if you could think about that on your next commentary, if you say very much like a false two, we'd be very proud as a podcast.
When I was coaching at Dartford, we played Worthing. And a very good young player who's now playing for York, because the manager of Worthing, who is Jack Hinchcliffe, was dad.
Yes.
So it is relevant what I'm saying. And Joe Felix, his name is, Carlton Cole recommended him to us at Woking. We didn't tell you, he was very small. But he played against us, this is 2 years ago, right back and went into midfield. And it did us. We won the game by complete luck. But he was I spoke to Martins about doing it. So it is something, but the thing is, we love the nines, don't we, Pete?
Yes.
The nines. Well,
Nothing
really,
false about it,
nothing false about it. And if there is anything, the one little admission really, when Ricky Lambert made his first Premier League appearance for Southampton, they came up with them, and I'd seen him play for the clubs in lower divisions, So for him at a later age, and then it was after the next Man City game after Aguero, the start of the following season, home to Southampton. And so I went down to watch Southampton train, and I saw Ricky and I said, I'd love to commentate on your first Premier League goal. It's wonderful. So I love having been a wannabe non-league player who was never going to do what Ricky did, but I love that kind of story coming true, And he went, I'm sub. I went, oh, okay. Anyway, he comes on in the game. They lost the game, but he scored 3-2. Now, bias is something commentators get accused of all the time. But if you listen to that commentary, which I presume is out there somewhere, I was really living it for Ricky for that moment, And that's what I talk about forwards. I do, in watching the modern game, I do fear. Peter and I were talking about, I played up front even a long time ago where the ball was played along and you don't get the ball in quickly, which you want. I made my run. You put the ball in. If I'm not there, it's my fault. But if you pass it 15 times and I'm not there when it finally comes in, it's your fault. Is that fair?
Yeah, of course.
So that kind of loving the centre forwards, I suppose, is the nearest thing.
How hard is that to stay neutral, not just to centre forwards? I'm talking about actually players now. You haven't got to give names, but obviously you everyone likes a certain player, or and don't like other players, or dislike other players. So, how hard was it for you? Because you can ramp up someone's name and make them sound brilliant, or like.
You can inflate someone's value. That's the power.
So
of
how
your
hard
voice.
was that for a likability? Sort of, because I know you've got to keep it like it's
I
your
think
job.
it's changed a bit. I think every goal now is given full maximum. And maybe that's something that perhaps has gone against me recently. That I try to evaluate. To be the 5th goal of 5, it's got to be something pretty special. If it's just an ordinary goal, that's 5-0. You know, I mean,
do you mean people can sometimes? Do you feel that there is a trend of having to be too excited about every goal without?
I just think the entertainment part of it, that excitement is part of watching football. You know. And I respect that totally, and that's things move on. I try to just react, and that if it hits the sweet spot, it's fine. And if it's a great moment, it's easier because that everybody knows that. But if it's in between, or if the goalkeeper's at fault, then when do you say it was the goalkeeper's mistake? Harry Kane scored in the last England game. It was really a goalkeeper's mistake, but Kane scores again for England. I had a problem with Gary Lineker. We got a hat trick in the World Cup in Mexico.
86.
Yeah, he did. And the third goal, I think it's the third, one of the three. I think maybe the third goal. The goalkeeper dropped it at his feet, and so I'm relatively inexperienced, and I've gone more on a terrible mistake, and by the way, it's his hat trick, where I probably should have gone, wow, it's a hat trick in the World Cup for England, and so you reflect on those things, but it's basically, how do you feel? I try not to. If you overthink it, it drives you mad.
Yeah, so when I think about the moments that have probably hit the hardest, obviously the Aguero moment, that drink it in. I mean, you can't have scripted that, right? You shout Aguero's name, and then it's drink it in, and also Collymore closing in. You would never know he was closing in. So you
don't script it, but you do what if it, and the what if you score on your birthday, and then you would have that what if you score and it's your 50th goal. You've got to have those what if moments, and I think that's perhaps what a lot of commentators will do, and I've certainly done it, is make sure that you cover your bases. But I mean, the Aguero situation, there was never a what if like that, was how that unfolded. But I do remember thinking that it could happen, even at 1-2, that it could happen. And then at 2-2, obviously, I said something about City need 2 in added time or something like that. And poor Jacko, it should have been him. If it had been him, I could have. His name would be the one shouting around, but no one remembers his equaliser. I watched what happened straight afterwards.
I watched that moment on the way here of mine, right? And it just the bedlam that is going on, right? I mean, I remember Joe Hart running. There was the whole camera was shaking. There was people's shirts were off. It was just absolute carnage. How do you remain? I know you're obviously excited, but how do you remain professional in that situation with, because it'd be so intense?
Well, there are several things about that. Tony Mills was the match director, who should get far more credit than me, because those pictures, you're right, the Joe Hart shot is sensational.
It's unbelievable way he's running.
He's cutting, he's remaining calm. And nobody knows him, and they should. And he's still directing football matches now. I was at a function about a year ago, and he was a member at this place where we were doing a charity function. He was sitting in the back. It was a dinner function. And I recognised him. I was Paul Merson was the main turn, and I was just introducing him. I said, but before we go in, I'm sure you want to know a little bit about Aguero from me. I said, but there's somebody in the room who should get more credit than me for it. So I got him. He was looking at me furiously because he knew what was coming. But he did enjoy it. I think that he got there. And I said, he's the man who's made this possible, because it is television. It's not radio, and my words could be on radio, but his pictures are what make it, maybe the combination of the two things, but certainly the pictures more than the words. And that's what you're trained for, really. I mean, you've had big moments in football matches where the crowds are going mad and you stay calm and be professional. But you knew history was being made. It was funny history, really, because Manchester City was supposed to win. It wasn't like a big giant killing act, was it? But it was the great comeback, and the luck of holding a microphone on that particular day, really.
And I interrupted you when you were just about to talk about one of the best games that you've ever seen, which was the 4-3
game. Yeah, but that was, both teams were going for the title, and neither of them won it. It's almost as if they punched themselves out in this eliminator. Really. Manchester United came through on the rails and won it. But it was Robbie Fowler scored after 2 minutes, and then once Newcastle had equalised, then Liverpool were only in front again when Collymore closed in. And it had, Schindler scored, didn't he? Asprilla scored. Yeah. And Les Ferdinand scored, and Robbie got 2, and Stan got 2. So there were great players, involved in it, and they just went for it, right. Even during the game, I've heard the whole game back, and when we had COVID, one of the very few bonuses from it was some of these old games were sort of given the modern day treatment, really. It was a Monday night football around that game, and Andy Gray and I were sort of evaluating it as it went. This is special. This is really special, So I watched it with a couple of members of my family who heard me bang on about it, but never watched the game. And I go, "What do you think of the end?" They said, "It's better than you thought. Than you said it was. It's even better than that, So. That stands out, and I stick by that because I've seen it again recently. Yeah.
Is there any moments that you regret? I remember obviously Brian Moore with the quickly Kevin Willie score, and I listened to that podcast as well. Like, obviously, I love nostalgic football.
I was on that,
and he
podcast.
said he regretted it.
Yeah, Brian was wonderful help to me. I was
amazing commentator, right?
Yeah, and great voice, great appreciation. Really like to say a fan with a journalistic nose for the story. He knew what was going on, journalistically, but he still was able to project a massive amount of the atmosphere into the broadcast. But he deeply regretted that, and
just because he put him on the spot, Kevin Keegan, and then he says
Kevin and he were really close friends. Brian went out and made a documentary when Kevin was playing in Germany and things like that. So he probably got Kevin into the television deal anyway, and it's such a shame. I was on that podcast, and that's the first thing I said. Look, before we go any further, I need to tell you on behalf of Brian Moore and the Commentators Union, Brian did deeply regret that. For me, there's too many, Peter. You have to learn to put it to one side, and I think what I loved about playing football as a forward, is you could be the worst player on the pitch and win the game, and then nobody ever talked about the bits you messed up. You were just and as a commentator, the goals don't cover that. So because the game's alive, any slip of the tongue, misidentification.
Has it become harder, the craft, because of social media, and everyone's got an opinion now on commentators, on pundits, on co-commentators? Kind of, one, like you say, one mispronunciation and people are on you.
Pronunciations, that's a matter of taste anyway. So that's, when I go to America, we're going to have some meeting about this, because the foreign names, and you ask the player, really. But then the player. My very quick story about that is Paolo Wanchop, who you remember, came up to Barry Davis and myself, was dating it a little bit, and said, I want to be called Wanchope. My mum says it's Wanchope. So we did it, me for Sky and Barry for Match of the Day. And then about a month later, by coincidence, Barry and I were on the same game again. I was playing for Derby then, I think. And he came up and he said, no, can you go back to One Shot, please? And I go, well, just
it does sound great though, doesn't it? One shot,
Yeah, this is what we were saying. You should have done
about 3 shot pays, didn't
he? You should have given Martin the Crouchy.
Crouchy. Yeah. Well, I said, like all the obviously Brazilian lads just throw whatever they want on the back of the shirt, right?
Yeah, that was the beginning at the start. We remember Hasselbank had Jimmy on his shirt to start with, and they banned it.
Yes,
because it wasn't Jimmy on his passport. His name is Gerald, I think, J-R-R-E-L, something like that. So the Premier League used that. So if you had Janino on your passport, you could be called Janino, you know. But I think it's more flexible.
Well, it's
now.
anything now, isn't it?
It'd
You
be
know.
Crouchy. You'd have Crouchy on it.
No,
wouldn't
well,
you?
I said Crouchaldinho.
Yes.
A question I wanted to ask was, you are certainly one of the most respected commentators in world football. In your career, was there moments where managers had to pull you? So for instance, near enough everyone from Sir Alex Ferguson has had a ticking off. Now, has that ever happened to you from either him or a
From
manager?
him. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I owned up, and I'll happily tell you, it was Dennis Irwin had left Manchester United to go to Wolves. And in a Wolves game that he was obviously watching
Yep.
at home, I said, and Dennis Irwin asked for a free kick, went down to the referee, and I said, I think he'd have got that if he was still playing for Manchester United. And he was furious about that, and he was entitled to be. I called it, I said, I'm really sorry, that's careless commentary. And, I apologize. But then he said, and there was another game, and it turned out that I wasn't commentating on the other game. So I sort of was able to retire with a bit of dignity from the conversation. But yeah, I mean, Kenny Dalglish is always very hot on what the successful managers, they do. Detail includes what commentators say about their players, you know. But you can't overthink that. Again, no. You've got to. I'll give you an example about somebody who became a famous manager, but was a player, Gareth Southgate, where he played for Villa against Chelsea at Villa Park, and Chelsea won 3-0, I think, and he was responsible for 2 of the goals. And as we all know, Gareth's one of the great gentlemen of the road, isn't he? And a terrific person. And he was then playing for England a few weeks later, and I had to point the finger at him. And I said, sorry about the other day, you know. And he went, oh, you're only doing your job. I was terrible. And so, but you don't always get that kind of admission. But you are aware of it. But I think now there's so much on. Before, on a Super Sunday game, for example, you knew that was a focus for everybody. Now there are games all the time. And so it's impossible for everybody to keep up with everything.
There is a lot. I mean, there is a lot of football when you
it's
really
going to be more. There's going to be more Sky going. They're advertising up to 215 games minimum, they're saying. And so there may be more than that.
But on that point with the managers, aside from sort of the odd telling off here and there, would managers ever phone you and kind of feed you information as well? Because they knew you were speaking to millions of people and giving you that intel.
I'd phone them.
Yeah.
And that was quite easy at the start. When I worked for Yorkshire Television, it was 1976, 1981, we had 16 clubs in our area, and it was like living in a different country. Yorkshire. And if I remember Gary Megson, whose dad played for Sheffield Wednesday. Gary Megson started at Plymouth, strangely enough, but he was a Yorkshireman and son of a Yorkshire player. So we did Rotherham against Plymouth, and we featured Gary Megson at every conceivable opportunity. So it was like, so I had all the numbers of the Yorkshire managers, and one of them, a lovely guy, Mick Buxton, was manager of Huddersfield. He said, "You won't get me in the office, but you might get me down the working man's club, and this is their number." And I phoned him, and then I said, "Is Mick there?" Yeah. And it was of the time, you know, and so. And the trust, of course, was very important. One or two managers that I won't name said, "I'll give you my team if you give me theirs." And I go, no, that doesn't work like that. I'd rather not have your team. Thank you very much, you know. But very, very rarely, in 50 years, I probably on one hand. But
I know from speaking to you as well, like there are managers that, like you say, that might give you the team, but you'd always be really respectful and not say anything until you get handed the commentary, and then you're able to talk through it.
I told a story on our podcast, The Joy of Football, a couple of months ago about Alex Ferguson again, and he told me that they were playing at Sunderland. There's a FA Cup replay, and he was going to play with a sweeper, and this was a very. I'm going, oh, I know this. And how many people know this? You know, I'm going to the game. What wonderful information. I get to the ground, and the opposing manager is Peter Reid, and Andy Gray, who's my co-commentator, Peter Reid's best mate, and they're sitting in the office talking about, well, Man United are going to play with a sweeper. And
do you have to not say anything?
I said nothing.
Wow.
No, I said nothing. And
Not even a wink? Or
no. I just said...
Behind that with a little brush, like,
I can't say anything, but...
I can't say anything.
I genuinely believe that I'm not... My innocence, which I protest again here, has not been accepted at Old Trafford, because what we did do, we said, well, if Man United play like this conventionally, Sunderland are going to play like this, because Peter could give us all what Sunderland were going to do. But if they would play, if, for example, they did this, then Sunderland would play like that, which is actually what happened, of course. The story where the game went, they scored Phil Gray, I think he scored for Sunderland, and then he took Parker off at half-time, and United came back and won 2-1. So fine, they're through to the next round of the FA Cup. So I'm at home the next afternoon. I've got home, phone goes, and my wife goes, there's a Mr. Ferguson on the phone. I think he was still Mr. then. I said, well done, you won the game and everything like that. Yeah, they knew. And they knew because a player who had left Manchester United was playing in the northeast of England, and he'd heard from his mates back at Man United that the day before they'd done a practice match in which the reserves had played the team that was going to play at the training ground, and he got wind of this and he told Sunderland. Now that's the truth, and I'm not going to name the player, but it's pretty easy to work out, as I found out when I did it in my podcast, our podcast, but I still think that if Alex sat here now, he'd go, I don't know about that, you know. But that's the truth. The truth is I didn't betray it. But what do you do? I mean, I walked into a room full of knowledge. I got the knowledge, and I had to pretend I was ignorant, you know.
Do you have good relationships with managers? Is there like Sir Alex Ferguson, for example, that people they feel like they can pick the phone up to you?
It's harder now because they're the foreigners, but like Thomas Frank's wonderful. I mean, he is a manager for all ages, you know.
I really like him. I've been down to the training ground as well, and he's just good company and a lovely fella and very good manager.
He let me in before I did Arsenal's first. They played Brentford, Arsenal first game, wasn't it, in the Premier League when they came up, and he let me in. It was COVID. I had to have all sorts of COVID tests, but he let me watch the training the day before. It was a Friday night game. I went on the Thursday. Had to have a medical virtually outside the training ground, but apart from that, Thomas, they practiced the long throws right in front of me, as close as you are now, and they scored from the long throw. I sounded like a real smart, a real smart gentleman,
A really smart chap.
when they scored from it, and you know that kindness. You can,
because a day before a game, that's sacred. Like no one can get in. It's like
and I respect that. It has helped that I've done some coaching as well, because I meet them on the circuit when I'm maybe scouting for a non-league team, and I go to say an under-21 game at a club, a Premier League club, and the first team manager's there. Although I was coaching at Kingstonian a few years ago, and Martin Jol was manager of maybe Fulham by then. I think it might have been Fulham. Yeah. He came to the game, and Hans Sagers was his assistant. It might have been Tottenham.
It was Fulham. I remember.
So I go up, and I know Hans better than Martin. Yeah. Hans, and Martin goes, "Oh yeah, what are you here for?" I said, "I'm the assistant manager." He went, "No," and I went. And Hans went, "Yeah, he is." No, and there were about 4 no's. And I don't think I was in the dugout. He was sitting in the stand watching the kids play against us, or the pre-season games. They always sent a good team. We actually beat Fulham once. Billy McKinley. Next time we played another game, a different club. He sent 8 internationals for a pre-season game. We lost 8-0. They didn't like to lose to a non-league team.
As a football fan yourself, and someone that's worked across obviously decades, what was your favourite period? So in terms of, it could be a decade, or it could be a spell where in the 70s or 80s, or it could be the 90s where Man United dominated, or when Arsenal had their turn, or Chelsea, or the City area. When did you enjoy it? Obviously, I know you can say you enjoy it like the whole lot, but if you had to pinpoint a certain category, where would you go?
Mid-90s, Woking won the trophy 3 times in 4 years at Wembley. Can I have that?
There you go.
Why not?
I didn't commentate on any of them.
Yeah.
I was at 2 of them, but the 95 one caused chaos, because it was the day that Blackburn won the league at Liverpool by losing, and that was Sky's big day, the first double header ever. But before that game came on, there was the trophy final, and Woking playing the trophy final. It went to extra time. And you know all the crafts that goes into the preview stuff, don't you? The wonderful pieces put together with music, work, and interviewing players, and all done in the week leading up to it, all junked because Woking, they were saying that when's this game going to finish? I'm hearing in the ear, and I'm watching it, and I'm supposed to be preparing for this massive game, and Woking won in the 120th minute. And I went mad. We were on the gantry then. I mean, there was like the teams had been announced and everything. I leapt on Andy Gray. He said, "I'm never going to work with you again. You behave like this." Jokingly, hopefully, and then sailed through. The game was fantastic because everyone was a winner. Liverpool won the game. Jamie scored
a great goal, didn't he?
It was a good goal. Yeah.
Liverpool won the game, and Blackburn won the league. Kenny Dalglish was doing spoof interviews with the Sky reporters he'd been so difficult with before. He was interviewing them, and Nick Collins, and Nick was going, "No, yep, okay, no." Like Kenny would have done. And Kenny was like, they're trying to get...
Brilliant.
It was a wonderful day. Truly one. And I wasn't a winner with Liverpool or Blackburn, but I was with Woking.
Wow.
And so, probably that's maybe the moment, because that relates to the Premier League. That was a special day. But for football, it's ever evolving, ever changing. And the one thing I've learned, and how you kind enough been inviting me today, is you've got to go with the flow. You've got to move with the change, move with the times. And I would love to see balls into the box for big centre forwards to score goals, and not the ball being played from the back. But I've got to accept that the best coaches in the world, and know much more than me, believe it's the way to go. And if they've got the players to do it, the pitch to do it on, do it. Go and win trophies doing it.
It was nice, just kind of off air, for me and Martin to bitch on the way here about how no one crosses the ball anymore.
But I watched the best game I've seen recently was Oldham 3, Southend 2 in the playoff to get back into the EFL for both of them, and Oldham won it in extra time. There was not one ball from the goalkeeper out to the fullbacks or the centre back. All kicked long, everyone challenging for it, getting the second ball. Second ball, you don't get that anymore. No second balls, because there's no fighting football really. But that's whether it'll change when Pep eventually does move on and his disciples decide there's somebody else to follow. I don't know, but it'll come back in, and two forwards as well.
Bring back Marty Bassett.
Two forwards.
Two forwards. I mean, I still, foolishly, there's a lad who's in his 30s now, he's playing for Bromley in the league, called Nicky Kabamba, who's played in Scotland, and he's been around the scene for a long time. I had him at Hampton and Richmond as a coach about 8 or 9 years ago. And I would go, when the fullback's got the ball, you make you run in the channel. And I go, then why aren't you doing it? And he goes, well, I'm having to do it both sides. And I thought, when I was thinking about it, somebody else would do it the other side. Or you do crossover runs so that you would do that. And you never see that anymore. So, but I hope it will come back. Most things do go around. There's not too much that hasn't been done before. But we've never had such great pitches before. And we've never had so much data before. So these are factors that may take the game away from fighting football. But it's there if you want to find it, that's for sure, because only the very best can play the possession-based game.
Yeah, so watching football in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up to today, is the 90s for you your favourite time of watching football? No. That was just one that happened. Listen, I would watch if there was a match across the road now. I'd go and watch it. You can't differentiate. When I'm very lucky to still have people asking me to work, and they'll retire me. Because I love every game that I do, and the thrill is getting another game. Just like that first game in 50 years ago, when I got asked to do it, I was half nervous, but half going, wow, I've got a chance to watch football from a pretty good seat in the house and rabbit on a bit about it.
You live and breathe it. That's what's so clear.
It's great.
What I'm interested to know is, outside of football, are there any other interests? Or
I always thought this about Rafa Benitez. Like, I just can't imagine him going to the swings with his kids.
Yeah,
I feel like he's going to still get them in formation.
I totally agree. Or
do you know what I mean?
Or watching the chase or something.
God, you two
don't get my two kids in here
to
talk about what I didn't do with them. No,
I can't imagine it.
No, I love cricket. I live with Bob Willis and Jeff Howarth, who both captained their countries in growing up. Student flats, if you like, young people flats in South London, Streatham. And so I go and watch, when I've got some downtime, I go to watch red ball cricket, really. It's a bit traditional. And so I've got a few friends. The manager when I played was Mickey Stewart, who was England's cricket coach, but was a professional footballer. He's Alex Stewart, his son, played 100 and odd times for England. So Alex used to come and watch us train when he was 4 or 5 years old. So I've known him pretty much all his life. Yeah. So I can go to the Oval and talk to him, which is lovely. But we talk about football. He's a big Chelsea fan, massive Chelsea fan. And
see, it all comes back to football. Is there anything?
Yeah,
is there
that's
anything
true.
non-football that you're into at all? No.
Well, yes, of course there is, but it's not very interesting. I mean, I like watching sort of the cops thing, British television. I like British television.
Yeah.
Bit of traffic cops, that kind of thing.
No,
what you mean?
Told me about the cowboy films on the way here, and I recommended Yellowstone to him.
Yeah, but that's changed.
It's a modern day cowboy film.
When I was a kid, we had guns with caps, that were like that, and holsters. So did you wear your holster? So like the goodies or the baddies, where you pulled it out with your opposite hand, So I think, and playing out in the fields as we were allowed to as young people. Come home for your tea at 6 o'clock. That's what it was. So we would play as well as football, which of course is probably not now acceptable on the big screen. And John Wayne was one that I used to love his films. I've still got the box sets. Are probably, I don't know what format they're on, but they're certainly.
So Martin, your podcast is called The Joy of Football, right? And it resonates how much you enjoy the game still now after all these years. Yeah. Out of all the players that you've watched, who's been the biggest joy to commentate on?
Peter Crouch.
Other than me.
Yeah.
Other than me, right?
I don't know. It's sometimes, in terms of like being biased, if you know somebody like Ricky Lambert, that story does involve a certain amount of bias. I do like the players who have become what I wanted to be. I know how hard it was to play. I mean, playing in the Isthmian, there was no National League in those days, so the Isthmian League was the top non-league. And I was a very ordinary player in that, playing in some very good company. So the ones that can do what I tried to do, I really do. I mean, Erling Haaland's amazing. How I would have, if I had 1,000th of his talent, I'd have been a much better player. So I think that's where I get my joy. If somebody scores a header from the penalty spot, I'm pretty excited about that. So I think, but just one thing that you touched on about enthusiasm is energy. Really, the word. My partner she's a lovely lady. I'm punching way above my weight.
Nothing wrong with that, Martin.
Oh yeah, I knew we had something other in common apart from the number 9
You're in good company here, mate.
She, the last words, and we don't. The secret of our relationship, unlike yours, I don't want to know the secrets of yours, but I'm sure the listeners might. But is that we don't live together. But we always.
I can see that working really well. Yeah?
I pass it. I just
said that. Your eyes lit up then. Next thing I've got an idea.
I hope you're getting the train home as well. We're going to dissect that.
But the one word she says to me, and it is about football commentary, just to make it clear, the one word she says to me before I go off to work is energy. And I think the passion for the game hopefully gives you the energy. And there'll come a time, I mean, we all lived our lives, and you're living your lives pretending we're 30 or 25 or whatever. And at some point, you can go a long way like that. I've seen a lot of really famous names, ex-footballers, live like young people until the point where actually the time kicks in and you have to say enough's enough. But I'm hoping that I've got 1 or 2 years before that happens to me and I can still go for a jog. No, but the energy is the most important thing. And being around you guys, it energizes me as well, because You have to. Otherwise, you sit at home and give it all away. You know.
Yeah, you must get this away from football, where undoubtedly you're recognised more for your voice. So whenever are you in like a restaurant or somewhere and they take your order and you go, oh, I'll have the soup and the chicken, and they go, it's you.
Yeah, like that's a good point.
Because obviously you're not recognised probably more.
Your voice is more
like,
recognisable.
I get recognised facially at football because I've done a lot. I used to do the
but people that won't recognise football, or that you might be out, but they'll know your voice, and they could be. It could be a woman, like a nana or a woman, or they could just be anyone. Or you're
just
on the background.
I have to say they are mostly men, which is I suppose that's normal, isn't it? Really, but given the footprint of football now, it shouldn't be so. But then often it's taking a photo of their children who, despite what I said earlier, probably don't have a clue as to why. I was trying to get the I don't come and join us as well, so because it's really for you, you know. It's the privilege of what I've had, you know, working for. As I say, ITV gave me a great grounding. Sky have been brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and so that's luck, really. I mean, I look back and I think that happened. I nearly turned down going into television as an editorial assistant because I wanted to play. And Jimmy Hill, probably that's before everybody's time, but Jimmy Hill was presenter of Match of the Day, was also a players union, managed Coventry up to the First Division, left and became a television presenter. And I did some work for him before I was in television.
Didn't you write his column?
I did. Yeah, I did. That's the work I was doing. And I got offered this chance to go into television in July, and I was doing pre-season. And I said, I don't know. And I told him, and he went, "You're mad." He was, "How good are you as a footballer?" And I went, "Not so good." And he went, "Go home, phone them up, and tell them that you'll take the job," which I turned it down. You never know where it will lead you. Well, it's led me onto a lovely sofa here and beyond. And I did. But honestly, I've then thought that they'll say no because I turned it down. So I'll be all right. And they said, yes, come in next week. And then I had to go to the Mickey Stewart, who was my manager, and we trained at the Oval, actually. We were doing pre-season. He had a lot of Surrey County Cricket Club. And on the steps of the Oval, I went up to him and I said, "I'm sorry, I can't. This is August. We're playing first league game 2 weeks. I think I've got a job. I can't play." All he had to say was, "No, we're starting in a couple of weeks," and I wouldn't have done it. He said, he just looked at me and went, "Good luck, son," and that was it. I shook hands with him and went off to television, not to be a commentator, but to be working on cutting the goals together. So when you look back on it, you think that was meant to be, really. I mean, I wasn't in charge of those decisions. I would have made the wrong decision every time. But something sort of pushed me. And I'm sure if you look back at your lives, when you get nostalgic and you get older, you'll find the same thing.
But it's also a lesson in saying yes to things, you know, and as you say, not knowing where that leads. It can be kind of against human nature to do that. But
I had no. People say, "Oh, well, you must have wanted to be a commentator." I wanted to be a footballer, and it took me to the path where I could contribute, hopefully, a little bit to the game that I loved.
Yeah, well, I think, like, for me, I don't know if you're anything like me, but if I'm at home on my own, very often I'll put the Premier League years on. Right? Would you ever do that? No. Would you ever watch that? No,
because I'm thinking about the next game. That's true for maybe when all this comes to an end, which it must do by the sheer logistics of life, sooner rather than later. But no, I've never been a great one for it's done. Yeah. And that's why I like saying "and it's live," because it meant a lot to me for it to be live. When I started, I would watch the big match, and maybe my game would be on the big match. So I'd watch that because it was on the big match, you know, and it had been done the day before. But when it's live, there's nothing you can do anything.
I love this attitude. This is like you on the second day of a big weekend. You know, we've talked about before, where you need to come in with a new energy. Can't be reflecting on the night before, going, "Oh, I feel crappy today."
We have a lot of people
energy.
We have a lot of people on Stag Do's writing in saying it's day 2. There's a couple flagging. We send Sid's in, and he does a team talk for them.
I'm more than happy to do that if you need any help.
Or in future we get Martin to do it to any Stag Do's.
But by luck, and this is by luck, and they're talking about luck and destiny, I don't like the flavour of alcohol. So I don't drink and never have drunk. And it's nothing to do with marginal gains and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like it. And I don't like the smell of it, don't like the taste of it. So whether that's allowed me to be a bit more energetic as
We
I've
can still
got
be
older, I
friends.
don't know.
Like,
And
we
maybe
can
it's
still be
what's
friends.
protected your voice because you're a little bit raspy. You've just come back from
Yeah.
a bit of a trip in Miami.
Yeah, it's the aircon.
That's the
Oh,
aircon's
just
a nightmare,
it's the
isn't
old aircon
It's the
excuse,
aircon.
Martin.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Turn them
It's
off.
safe.
Pavarotti did it, so you
Oh,
should
well.
do it as well.
Yeah,
So.
aircon off. Just quickly on that, on the and this is live. Was that your twist that you put on there, or was that? Did they say you need to say it's live?
It was
and then
me.
That was
Yeah.
all you.
Yeah, because the reasons, because I did a lot of recorded football, and I was still thrilled. I'm still thrilled that it's live.
Yeah.
It's amazing that what's happened in the 50 years. I remember being at the World Cup in Brazil, and it wasn't so much the commentating, but I was standing on Copacabana Beach talking to Sky Sports News, and my family were watching, and I'm just standing like we're talking,
Yeah.
sitting now. But I can't, this. How does this happen?
Yeah.
Can't happen. It really can't. 'Cause I've been through all the television where that would have taken like a year to fix it up. All they did was dial in a number, and there you are. You'll be hearing. Put the earpiece in. You'll be hearing so and so from London, and you just talk. And so there's a miracle about it that I'm wide-eyed about
Passion.
it still, and I'm probably wide-eyed about football still. So I probably have never grown up, and it's about time I did. But I'd be frightened to do so now.
Never go up, Martin.
No.
Honestly, what is the point of that?
No, there's no point. Only if you're punching above your weight.
Yeah, Martin, with regards to your podcast, Joy of Football, how's it going? Are you enjoying it?
Yes, it's a very much a case of two elderly gentlemen, but talking about what they love. The joy of football. The other person I do is Neil Barnett, who's a top journalist, but known mostly for being a Chelsea daft and working on. They used to do the
announcements,
pitch announcements.
Yeah, I remember him.
And he like comedians
the
work
spy.
the room. He worked Stamford Bridge like nobody else could do it really. But he then went off and worked on a show in the States, based in England. Sirius XM is the big soccer station on the radio in the USA. So he hosted there for 15 years. So he knows what he's talking about. But he gets off on one sometimes, and I have to calm him down. He's the voice of passion. I'm the voice of reason. But we've done over 60 episodes. We've had some guests, and I think part of the deal, Pete, was me coming here.
I'll be coming on.
I didn't negotiate this, but my producers, who are young and thrusty, and actually speak above their station to eminent people like you.
Here we are.
Look at the three frosties over there.
We said this was a horny podcast, didn't we?
Yeah. But the truth is, I've seen, in the time we've been doing the podcast, I've seen Peter a few times, and I've only said, I'd like, you did say to me once, you must come on the podcast. So I said, I'm still available if you want me to come on. Yeah. But I've never said, and in fact, I've never said today, even today, will you come on mine? Sort of, but that lot, the young and thrusters, they
So we got Ross in front, Hansy, and Thrusty.
But it is called the
It's
Joy
a
of
home and
Football.
away tie, is it? This one for you guys.
Well, if it is, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, Martin, honestly.
Because Billy, who is the head of the youth team over there, he mentions your name. He's Neil Barnett, I'm Martin Tyler. He mentions Peter Crouch more than us put together.
Oh, wait,
the whole
man.
time. He's a slave to what you've achieved.
The three frosty tears, isn't it?
But it's there, it's fun, and it's done through the heart more than the head, to be honest with you. Yeah.
No, but listen, if it's anything like the chat we've had today, Martin, it's genuinely, for me, you are the voice of football, certainly Premier League football, and it's been a pleasure just listening to your commentary over the years. It's been a pleasure being able to meet you as a player as well. I'd like to think we get on very well.
We do.
And I think this podcast was everything I imagined it would be. So I really appreciate you coming
That's really kind of you, and it's been my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. And are we going back on the train together?
Yeah, we will, mate. I'll tell you what, Mike, if you don't mind.
Other side of the tracks, though, when we get to our destination, we're going completely opposite directions.
Make sure you get an Uber when we get off there. Could we do some messages?
Yes,
Is that
of course,
okay?
yeah.
Oh God.
Here we go. No, go with it.
So this is the problem when we have guests on and we invite them into our world. Our world's
If
very
you've got any
strange.
questions, if you've got any questions at all, we can explain.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go
okay,
for it,
okay.
Crouchy.
Hi City sent Uno Borlo and the human ruler. We can explain later. Regards to your families and your testicles.
Any questions so far?
No, but I'm getting the gist of it now. Yeah.
Okay, quick story time. I may have met the ultimate Carl the other day. How do you explain Carl?
Keep going.
Okay, rocked up to the pub with a guitar. Not live music or anything. He was just with some mates, not too outrageous. Clapped so the whole pub could hear every time a joke was told, a little bit knobbish. Proceeded to play the guitar badly, like Will from The Inbetweeners, but slightly more annoying. But to top it off, he drank his pint with the straw. I won't say what's in brackets there, just out of respect. Thoughts? Surely VAR need to get involved here. I'd happily take a yellow for giving him a shove at the bar, but surely this behaviour is provocative and deserves a yellow also. It was a plastic straw too, so no regard for the environment. Please reassure me that this is disgusting behaviour. Martin, what are your thoughts on drinking through a straw? I know you're not an alcohol man.
No.
If you saw a man drinking a pint through a straw, how would you feel?
Not normal, I don't think.
No.
I do like those the shakes, the protein shakes and things like that you get sometimes, and they offer them with a straw.
With a
through
straw,
the-
yeah.
So I'm anyone doing that is fine by me. But the pints that I see, I've usually had to buy, and they're so expensive that I turn my back on them when they drink it. So
I think bringing a guitar to a pub is kind of an odd. It's a slightly odd look. You don't see that very often. Don't really know what the rules are around it. But one thing on that I would love to see brought back, which I think has kind of got lost a little bit, is just pianos in pubs. I think they were it's something that should just it's almost should be a law. I reckon one piano. Obviously, only go play it if you're any good. Can't just bang out the Rugrats theme or Chopsticks. But you don't see pianos in pubs so much.
no, I've got a piano in my house. And
Do you play?
No. Are you talking about football? Or
No.
And no, I don't. But my daughter did, and then we had the piano for her. She's 35 now, so she's fled the nest quite a while ago. And the piano is up for discussion now, what we're going to do with it. So if there's any charitable cause who needs a piano in the Surrey area and collect it, I'd be happy to donate it to anybody. We'd have to check it out.
Yeah, of
If
course.
it passed the test, and they can get it and come and take it. Come and have it.
And if not, maybe we get a little piano in the Chumbawamba bar.
Well, I
you
just
know, for any
think. I
guest.
mean, that'd be a lovely thing if we could. We'd obviously pay you for it, but I think Chris plays a little bit, and
not as well
so-
as Patrick Bamford. I
No,
would say,
true,
but
true. But I just think having Martin Tyler's piano in the Chumbawamba bar could be absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
Just we do have the odd guest that comes through. It's nice to offer, isn't it?
Yeah, it hasn't been used for about 15 years, so I think tuning it might be a problem, but
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd be able to with your resources.
Yep.
You fine-tune the podcast, so...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay, just another one here. Crouch Dog, Womble of Watford and Maple Leaf Wonder. Regards to your families. Just listening to your pod with Big Harry. And curiosity got the best of me. Who do you think would win a golf 4-ball? 4 managers versus 4 players. Needless to say, Gareth Bale excluded. Keep up the incredible work, Chris. Give the circumstance you've taken your news so well. And the publicity is the best thing. All the best.
Probably have to explain that very quickly. Won't go into it too much. I had to remove a bollock because I've got I had testicular cancer. So we talk about it on the podcast a little bit.
Yeah, and Chris very bravely came out and raised a lot of awareness for that particular cause. So.
But it does explain some of the language.
Yeah,
that you're
yeah.
hearing.
No, but both my sympathies and my admiration for what you able to talk about it, because that's what they say about we men, isn't it? That we don't talk about these problems.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we've been trying
I
to
had
do.
2 voice operations 2 years ago, and it took the wind out of my sails in more ways than one. Really, I couldn't even pick up the phone. Occasionally, Crouchy rings me, but last time he rang me, I said, "It can't be Peter Crouch because you never ring. It must be another number."
I'm more of a WhatsApp man, Martin.
But so and I'm happy. I had a wonderful treatment from the NHS, absolutely fantastic. And Friday week ago, I went for my latest 6-month checkup on it. It's all brilliant. I've done 50 odd commentaries this year. So, but when it was going on, it was no fun at all. And as a commentator, you tend to lose more than your voice. You lose your total identity, really. So well done for.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as you can
really.
see, all listeners get in touch, and that, we keep the conversation going. It's great that everyone piles in, so we keep the conversation, as we say. But anyway,
well done.
Back to the managers versus players.
Yeah, any managers or players you've come across? Are you a golfer, Martin, yourself or not?
Like I'm a teetotaler to the drinking community, I'm a non-golfer to the golfing community. It's the ball stationary. I have no track with any game where the ball is stationary. If the ball's moving, I'm in.
Are you tempted with a bit of paddle? That's the new one.
Yeah, I think I'm learning how to pronunciation is very important. I've heard people on the radio call it padel, which is how it's spelled. And so, are you a paddle or a padel?
I thought it was paddle, but correct me if I'm wrong, boys.
Even if it was padel, I just can't bring myself to say that.
No.
Is it just me or not?
I think if you said the word padel to me, you'd have to leave the podcast.
But
You're dead to me.
Funny, I would with the lady that I mentioned earlier that I live 7 miles away from, but we're very much together. We're talking.
What a long description.
Yeah, so that everybody understands. We're talking about actually moving closer together in a court, playing on the same side against her 2 kids at paddle.
Yeah, nicely
And
done.
so
Nice.
that may, if we speak again in the future, I may be able to add more to that.
Oh, great.
Our conversation on the way home obviously is sorted. I need to know obviously how you've worked that out with the living away from each other. My wife on this podcast, very affectionately known as San Marino, because she kicks off every 10 minutes. So
That's one of the best ones I've ever heard. That. So that's out in the public. You've used this.
Yes,
on the podcast.
Very good.
So if
People
I
write in and say, how's San
If
Marino?
I tell people what was it like on the Crouchy podcast, I'll say this was the best line ever. Then I won't be breaching any trust between us now.
Because she doesn't understand the football reference, so it just works beautifully.
So obviously, if you do see her in the village, you're
Yes.
perfectly welcome to say, how are you, San Marino, on this fine day?
That'll be a test, won't it, as to whether
I think to Alps is just a lovely country, It's-
She loves you. She loves you.
I think my ears have been cuffed enough in the past. Another one.
Okay, well...
Have we got an answer here? Managers versus players, very quickly.
Well, they all play. That's the thing. They said when Graham Souness was the manager, he banned it, didn't he, at Liverpool?
Right.
And the players went up in arms about it. So I don't think as I've been coaching non-league football, I wouldn't want my players traipsing around a golf course in the course of the week. I wouldn't. Go and play it in the summer. But you have to play it. You have to play it every day to be any good at it, don't you? That's the problem.
But agreed. I think Graham Souness is someone you've mentioned who I've played golf with, and he's very good. He loves it. Yeah. Fabio Capello, never seen anyone play as much golf as Fabio Capello. So they would be 2 managers. I would say Guardiola can play. Loves
Have
it.
you been to La Manga where the players they have ex-players golf? Terry Mancini who was way before your time.
I know Terry, yeah.
But he organised it for a long time anyway, and La Manga and the queue around the block for players wanting to play, and some of them are old players who have been managers as well. So,
and I'm just making up that 4-ball. I think Gary O'Neill was a scratch golfer, I believe.
Yeah.
Around scratch.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be a decent 4-ball against the players. What, Bale, Bullard?
We said we can't have
we
Bale.
can't have
It
Bale.
says-
Not going to have him, right? Okay.
So is his current players? No.
Well, I just think if you just get 4 players, I know he's excluded him, but we'd have Bale, Bullard,
But yeah.
and John Terry.
Yeah, JT's very good.
Harry Kane's is all
Harry
right, isn't
Kane.
it?
That's
Harry
right.
Kane,
That's a decent 4-ball. That I think that 4-ball with managers versus players.
Yeah.
That's a pay-per-view event.
Yeah.
coming up on
watch
TNT
that.
Sports is a new
There you go.
invented by Peter Crouch.
There we are. Misfits Golf.
Bloody hell.
We've started it.
We have. Can we have a cut of that then?
No. Live Golf. Okay, last one, Martin. We won't keep you too much longer.
No, that's no problem.
This has a retro feel, so hi Virgin, Shimpads and Sids. I was just...
Guess, just very quickly, Martin, who do you think's who here?
Virgin, Shimpads and Sids.
Well, take one out of it because
but
that's
you're the
obvious.
virgin.
Yes. Thank you very much, Martin. I never thought I'd hear that from you.
No. But since you've been, that's been your catchphrase before you became a media darling. You know that if I wasn't a footballer, what would I be?
I would be a virgin, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And since it's obviously you, so
Yeah.
yes.
And then I'd take champagne.
So champagne. Okay. I was just catching up on the adverts pod, and you missed the one that's had kids all over the country volleying drink cans into the bin. He's right. It's an absolute classic. John Barnes, Lucasade Sport ad. Give it a Google. You won't be disappointed. I don't have to Google that. I'm sure you know that one as well, Martin, right? Quenches your first fast, I remember. Yeah. And then he screwed it up and volleyed it in the bin. I found this trip down memory lane inspired me to create a very striker-heavy advert 11. So you'd be happy with this, I think.
Yes.
Okay, Stella Courtois.
Yeah.
Reassuringly expensive. Ben White's lemonade. I'm a secret lemonade drinker.
Brilliant.
Mark over Mars a day helps you work, rest and play.
Brilliant.
You enjoying these,
No,
Mark?
I love it because I'm on that page. The boys will tell you.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I like these.
I
things
like
very
these.
much. Yeah.
Okay, just one Pedro Cornetto. Give it to me. This is amazing. Snickerless Anelka. You're not yourself when you're hungry. Demba ba da da da. I'm loving it. Demba ba ba da da da. I'm loving it. Okay, McDonald's. Washing machines live longer with Callum Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Dwight Yorkie, not for girls.
Fair.
Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline, right? Wow. Dennis L'Oreal, because you're worth it.
Yeah.
Ah, L'Oreal.
World class.
L'Oreal. Okay, Stuart the Jeweller, that's right.
That is world class.
Well done, Stuart. Legend.
I have to say, Stuart, I think that's one of the best we've had.
So good.
That's right. That's right down my sense of humour line. That.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Have you heard the one about the zoo janitor at the National Museum, the National History Museum?
No.
Pterodactyl.
Oh, I'd like to take you out for a hesky tonight, though. Emil.
Very good.
On that note, Martin, honestly,
what do you get when you cross a England batter and a form of transport?
no idea.
Joe Rootmaster.
This
That
should
didn't
be
go
a
down as well as pterodactyl, did it? So,
Martin Tyler stand-up.
Right,
We should
yeah.
make it happen.
yeah.
Why is there no drugs in the jungle?
Why?
Because of paracetamol.
Actually, my daughter does stand up, and I've been thinking I could be a scriptwriter, but no, I can't. I'm definitely 4 out of 4. 4th out of 4 here.
Mine, honestly, loved every moment of today. It was just a great podcast. It's so much great insight and obviously a lot of fun. And yeah, obviously your enthusiasm rubs off, and you can see why you've been doing it for so long. So thank
So
you
I'll
very
give
much.
you a tip then: get the train in with all your future guests. Obviously, that's helped a great deal.
Definitely, Martin. Thanks so much.
Loved
Thank you
it.
very much.
Loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice one. Thanks, Martin. Thank you, guys.